The fog was impossibly thick that morning, the kind that clings to your skin and makes you doubt your own footsteps. Ethan Cole stood on the empty platform of Stonemount Station, clutching a letter that had no return address and bore a date from 1892. The station wasn't on any map. No online train schedules mentioned it, yet here it was, tucked between two jagged cliffs and a yawning pine forest, as real as the chill in his bones. The letter had simply read, "Board the 1111. Do not miss it. You have questions. The answers are on board. J." He would have laughed it off, but he couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't a prank. His grandfather had spoken of a place like this in his final feverish daisy, something about a train that traveled not across land, but time. The air trembled. A whistle cut through the fog-lawn, and mournful. The train emerged from the mist like a ghost, black iron and polished brass, steam hissing from beneath its belly. It didn't look modern, nor did it look entirely antique. Its style was anachronistic, a collage of design from different centuries. Some Ethan recognized, some he didn't. As it groaned to a halt before him, a gold-lettered plaque above the engine read, "The ChronoLine Express." A conductor stepped off. He was tall and pale, his face severe but not unkind. He wore a uniform that looked Victorian, but with tiny glimmers of something more, almost like circuitry woven into the fabric. "Mr. Ethan Cole?" the man asked, tipping his hat. Ethan hesitated. "Yes, that's me." The conductor nodded once. "You're expected." He climbed the steps and entered the train. The instant the door shut behind him, sound warped. The station disappeared in the blink of an eye, replaced by a velvet corridor stretching impossibly far, its walls lined with golden trim and flickering sconces. The air buzzed faintly, like the inside of an old television set. Carriages branched out in both directions, but the conductor ushered him forward. "This way, car 6. As they walked, Ethan peeked through glass doors on either side. Each compartment had a different feel, as if carved from a separate moment in time. He passed one with oil lamps and passengers in powdered wigs, sipping tea and speaking French. Another buzzed with swing music, its occupants clad in flapper dresses and zoot suits. A third was dead silent, its lone occupant reading a scroll by torchlight. "What is this?" Ethan whispered. "Some kind of immersive exhibit." The conductor gave him a knowing smile. "You'll understand soon." They reached car 6. "Here," the conductor said, sliding open the door. "This will be your cabin for the duration of your journey." Ethan stepped inside. It was a compact room with a window overlooking swirling clouds. Wait, clouds? Hadn't they just left ground level? He turned, but the conductor was already gone. The door shut behind him. Ethan sat on the plush velvet seat and looked around. On the table beside him sat a pocket watch, ticking quietly. But when he flipped it open, there were no numbers, only 12 blank segments that lit up faintly as he touched them. A single one was glowing brighter than the rest. Then the intercom crackled above. "Welcome aboard the ChronoLine Express. Please remain in your designated car until your era is called. Do not attempt to interact across time layers unless permitted. The next temporal junction will occur in T-20 minutes. Prepare accordingly." Ethan blinked. This was no exhibit. This was real. His heart pounded. He tried opening the door, but it didn't budge. It wasn't locked, it simply resisted. He could see through the glass, and beyond it, a woman in a robe embroidered with golden dragons passed by. Her eyes glowed faintly blue. Before he could call out, the lights flickered. Then he felt it. A jolt, not sideways, but inward like his. The entire being was pulled through a narrow tunnel. The world outside the window changed. Gone were the clouds. Now he saw pyramids in ancient and vast, half-shrouded in golden sandstorms. He'd moved not just across distance, the pyramids outside his window stood taller than he had imagined. But something felt off. The top stones were still being placed, and rows of laborers moved below, hauling limestone under the whip of overseers. Ethan realized he was watching history unfold, not a documentary, not a simulation, but the actual construction of the Great Pyramid. He backed away from the window in disbelief. His mouth was dry. Before he could gather his thoughts, a knock echoed through the cabin. The door creaked open. A man entered, tall and lean, with bronze skin and eyes that held millennia in them. He wore a white linen kilt and a necklace of blue and gold stones. His arms were tattooed with ancient Egyptian symbols that shimmered faintly in the cabin's light. "I was told to speak with you," he said in perfect English, his voice low and sonorous. "You're Egyptian," Ethan managed. "From 2560 BCE, names Kem scribe to Pharaoh Khufu, or I was before I was pulled onto this vessel." Ethan blinked. "You speak English?" Kem touched his necklace. Translation weaved. Gift from the conductor. Language is no barrier here. They sat opposite one another. Kem studied Ethan curiously. "You're from the distant future, I assume, 2025. I'm just a university student. Got a weird letter. Now I'm on a train that travels through time." Kem nodded slowly. "You are not the first to say that. Many have boarded with no idea why." "Why are you here?" Ethan asked. Kem looked down at his palms. "A scroll appeared in my chamber one morning, inked with symbols no priest could decipher. It told me of this train, said the Nile would flood on a cloudless day. That was the sign." When it happened, I was walking near the banks, and the train came through the reeds. He looked out the window again. It never stays long, only long enough for a new passenger, or an old one to disembark. Disembark, you mean go back sometimes, but not always. Some are taken forward, others remain here, bound to a car. Ethan felt a chill. Bound. Kem nodded gravely. Time is fragile. The conductor selects carefully. If one interferes, it ripples through everything. A tone chimed overhead. Temporal junction approaching. Car 6, brace for shift. The air thickened. Outside, the sands vanished in a swirling blur. Kem didn't flinch. He had clearly been through this before. The blur gave way to a new sight, snow-capped peaks, and a castle rising from the mountains. Medieval Europe. The intercom crackled. Passenger transfer requested. Stand by. The door clicked. Kem stood. My stop, he said solemnly. What do you mean? You're from Egypt. I am. But this is where I'm needed now. This train, it rewrites destiny. Before Ethan could respond, the door slid open again. 2 armored knights stood outside, one holding a helmet under his arm, the other eyeing Kem with suspicion. The Pharaoh scribe. The taller knight asked. Kem gave a slight bow. Yes, come, the knight said. Our king is waiting. Kem stepped out, casting Ethan one last glance. You'll understand soon enough. The door closed behind him. Ethan rushed to the window, but the view outside was already shifting. The castle dissolved into fog. Next temporal junction in 20 minutes. He was alone again, or so he thought. A quiet knock tapped at his door. It wasn't like the one before this. One was hesitant, almost afraid. Ethan opened the door. A girl stood there, no more than 12. Her dress was from the 18th century, pale pink and frilled, stained with soot and ash. Her hands trembled and her face was smudged with dirt. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Please, she whispered. Do you have any water? Ethan ushered her in and poured from a silver flask on the side table. She drank greedily, then looked up at him with wide, haunted eyes. I'm Alice, from London. The year 1666. I was running from the fire. The Great Fire. Ethan asked. She nodded. Then the train came, out of the smoke. I climbed aboard before the city turned to embers. Ethan sat beside her. I think we're not just passengers. I think we're being brought here for a reason. Alice looked down at her lap. The conductor says time is breaking, that someone's trying to change everything, that we're here to stop it. Stop what? But before she could answer, the lights flickered, and a new voice whispered through the speakers. Not the conductor's. It was cold, mechanical. Wrong temporal breach detected. Unauthorized interference in car 8. Prepare for anomaly. Alice grabbed his arm. They're here, she whispered. The ones who don't belong. The train shuddered just slightly, like a metal animal twitching in its sleep, but the motion was enough to make the cabin lights flicker a sickly yellow. The smooth hum that had accompanied Ethan's ride turned uneven, as if something had disrupted the train's delicate rhythm through time. Alice clutched Ethan's arm tighter. Her skin was ice cold. Unauthorized interference in car 8. Temporal integrity compromised, a voice repeated. But this time something else followed. A static-laced growl, not a word. A noise, primal, unnatural. Ethan stood up, heart thudding. We should go see what's happening. No, Alice cried. The conductor told me car 8 is sealed for a reason. It holds them. She nodded. People who weren't taken by the train. People who forced their way in time rejects them. Before Ethan could respond, the hallway outside their cabin filled with hurried footsteps. He opened the door and peered into the corridor. Figures were moving, some in armor, others in robes, others in suits with blinking lights on their sleeves. Every one of them looked alarmed. A man in a top hat passed by muttering, "This is it. It's happening again." Ethan and Alice stepped out. Car 6, which had been eerily quiet since Ethan boarded, now buzzed with voices from every era. A woman in a toga asked, "Was that a breach?" A samurai replied, "Yes, we are near the rupture point." Ethan approached. A middle-aged woman with cybernetic eyes. "What's going on?" She scanned him for a moment. "Your new, let me guess, got a mysterious letter or vision." He nodded. She extended her hand. "Dr. Yara Hess. I'm from the year 2341. Artificial temporalist. This train isn't just a passage, it's a timeline stabilizer. It keeps centuries in orbit, preventing collapse." Ethan's head spun. "Collapse?" Yara nodded grimly. "Time's fabric has thinned. Someone is unraveling it. Every time you've heard about strange disappearances, historical gaps or impossible discoveries, it's been them. The anomalies." She shook her head. "Worse. Time walkers who shouldn't exist. They come from nowhere, no history. No records. Some say they're from failed timelines that shouldn't have survived." The lights flickered again. Car 8 lockdown breached. Gasps echoed down the corridor, sealed the doors. Someone shouted, but it was too late. The far end of the corridor burst open with a howl that didn't belong to any human. A gust of icy wind surged forward, extinguishing torches and dimming the sconces. The metal floor beneath Ethan's feet groaned. Out of the swirling darkness stepped 3 figures. They weren't dressed for any known era. Their clothing flickered, like static on a broken TV. Armor one moment, leather the next. sometimes bone. Their faces were mostly hidden by dark masks except for their eyes. Their eyes were silver, not reflective, not metallic, just silver, cold and full of void. Passengers screamed and ran in both directions. The anomalies didn't rush, they stalked. Every step seemed to bend time around them. A vase aged and crumbled to dust just from their presence. Yara yanked Ethan back into the cabin and slammed at the door. She muttered a command, and a pulsing blue barrier appeared across the doorway. They can't get through this. Not unless they've evolved again. Evolved, Ethan repeated. They adapt across timelines. That's why we isolate them. But if they've broken out, something has changed. Alice sat on the floor, arms wrapped tightly around her knees. They whispered to me in my sleep, she said softly. They said I was from a timeline that was never meant to be born. Ethan turned to her. What does that mean? Before she could answer, the pocket watch on the table began to tick, loudly. The numbers once blank began to fill in with glowing runes. Then a voice came through the watch. Not from the train's intercom. Ethan Cole, time is fraying. You have been chosen. He picked it up. Chosen for what? The voice was deep, calm, almost sad. To protect the spine of history. To find the origin passenger. Yara's eyes widened. They've activated the trial. What trial? Ethan demanded before anyone could answer. The cabin window exploded not with glass but with light. A beam struck Ethan directly in the chest. He felt his body rise, but not physically. His mind stretched across centuries. He saw flashes. A warrior queen with bleeding palms. A boy drawing symbols in a cave. A fire engulfing a library. A scientist holding a key that pulsed like a heartbeat. Then darkness. He collapsed. Yara knelt beside him. He's linked to the core. It's begun. Ethan coughed, struggling to breathe. What was that? Yara whispered. Your trial. You're now a temporal anchor. Alice stood, her voice shaking. But if he's the anchor, the anomalies will hunt him. The intercom Ethan sat in a daze on the cabin Next floor,
temporal junction
still
in 1
thundering
minute.
from the beam
All
of light that
passengers
had struck him.
prepare.
Destination year
behind his
2000
eyes, each fragment,
but
echoing
something
with the
in the
sense of
voice had
terrible
changed.
importance.
It wasn't just
The
warning
origin
them
passenger.
anymore. It was
The
a trial
trade.
of fractures in time. Yara helped him sit upright as the train hummed with renewed intensity. A cold blue glow now radiated from the pocket watch on the table. Whatever it had activated inside Ethan, he could feel it deep in his bones like a current of history flowing through his blood. The overhead intercom flickered again. Temporal junction achieved. Welcome to year 2189. Step carefully. The train gave a soft lurch. Then the fog outside the window parted. Ethan rose to his feet and looked out. Towering neon spires rose into a midnight sky, their tops vanishing into layers of artificial atmosphere. Streets wound through the air like rivers of light, and vehicles zipped past on magnetic rails. Drones blinked in formation above city squares, and massive holograms danced between buildings projecting faces, data, and unknown languages. The world outside was not dystopian, nor utopian, just alien in its technological majesty. Looks like home, Yara muttered, then glanced at Ethan. We should move quickly. If the anomalies are hunting you now, this stop might draw them. Why this year? Ethan asked. Yara's cybernetic eyes glowed faintly. The origin may have left a clue here. They exited the cabin, with Alice trailing close behind. Other passengers emerged cautiously from their own cars, figures from centuries apart, now sharing a single moment. The conductor awaited them at the end of the corridor. His expression was more severe than before. Mr. Cole, he said curtly, we must speak. They followed him to the observation deck, a circular glass-walled room at the center of the train. From here, they had a full view of the city outside, which seemed to rise and fall like the pulse of some living organism. I assume the pocket watch activated, the conductor asked. Ethan nodded. It called me the temporal anchor and mentioned something about the origin passenger. The conductor folded his gloved hands behind his back. Each cycle, the timeline selects a point of stability, a human anchor, connected across centuries, capable of resisting temporal collapse. You are that anchor. Why me? Unknown, the conductor replied. The criteria are beyond even my understanding. All we know is that the anomalies have learned to detect anchors, and when they do, they erase them. Yara spoke up. Why this time period? The conductor turned, staring out at the future skyline. In 2189, a discovery was made beneath the ruins of old Geneva, a machine buried in earth that should not exist, encoded with fragments of a human identity. An identity that appears to belong to the origin passenger. Ethan frowned. Who is the origin passenger? The conductor hesitated, then answered, softly. The first human ever to step aboard the ChronoLine, the one who created the first ripple in time. No one remembers their name, not because it was forgotten, but because it was removed. Alice looked confused. Removed. Erased from history, Yara murmured. That's what anomalies do. They're not just travelers, they're editors. Suddenly the train lights dimmed to red. Warning, car for breach detected. Anomaly, presence confirmed. Seal compromised. Passengers panicked. Some ran for emergency doors. Others pressed against windows. From the far end of the deck, a tall glass panel showed a figure approaching the outer corridor. It wasn't walking, it floated, its body was stretched and flickering, like a hologram fighting for existence. Silver eyes glowed beneath a translucent veil. A mask of shifting designs concealed its face, while its limbs crackled with energy from several time periods at once: chainmail, silicone, and stone armor, all flickering into one. The anomaly raised a hand. The glass trembled. "Move," Yara yelled. She activated her wrist device and created a shimmering portal on the far side of the deck. "This links to the outside. We can drop directly into the city below." Alice hesitated. "But what about the train?" Ethan didn't wait. He grabbed her hand and jumped through the portal with Yara right behind them. For a moment, everything was black. Then they landed hard on a metal platform overlooking a city street 30 stories above ground. Below them, a market buzzed with humanoid A's and people wearing retinal implants. The portal closed behind them just as the anomaly struck the train. A ripple shot through the sky, buildings blurred, their outlines shifting, as if the timeline itself stuttered. "Are they rewriting the future?" Ethan gasped. Yara checked her device. "The anomaly's reach has extended to this timeline. We need to reach Jeanette. The coordinates of the buried machine are hard-coded in my neural bank. But we're fugitives now," Alice whispered. "Even time is against us." Ethan looked toward the horizon where a flickering dome pulsed in the distance like a failing heartbeat. He didn't know what lay ahead, but something told him that machine beneath Geneva held answers not just to his own existence. The magnetic tram shot through the underbelly out across time. Blistering speed. "Then let's go rewrite the rules," transparent to allow a full view of the sprawling, neon-lit ruins of old Geneva. Beneath the glittering skyline of New Geneva, the remnants of the old world, lay crumbled stone buildings choked by overgrowth, collapsed statues half buried in dust, and streets patrolled by silent security drones. Ethan sat beside Yara and Alice, gripping the edge of his seat as they approached the draw point. "This is it," Yara said, her eyes glowing as she interfaced with the tram. "The buried machine is located beneath the old synchrotron. We're close." Ethan tried to focus, but the presence of the anomaly still pulsed in the back of his mind, like a splinter lodged in his thoughts. Ever since the beam had struck him, he had started sensing things, bursts of emotion from the past, flickers of voices not his own, entire scenes playing out in his peripheral vision, people he'd never met, places he'd never been. He wasn't sure if he was hallucinating or evolving. The tram halted at a station half submerged in water. They disembarked, the air growing colder and thicker with dust the deeper they descended into the ruins. Vines and rust had overtaken the tunnel systems. No digital signal reached this deep, but Yara's implant remained aglow this way. She whispered, motioning toward a sealed hatch near the far wall. "The machine is behind this." She knelt and removed a small cylindrical device from her belt. A glowing blue filament spun out and hovered over the hatch, scanning its surface. Alice stepped back. "What if the anomaly followed us?" Yara answered without looking up. "It won't risk the depths, not yet. These are anch-resistant zones. Sacred ground, in a sense. But we won't be safe for long." The lock clicked, and the hatch hissed open. Beyond it lay a steep metal staircase leading down into pitch-black. Ethan took a deep breath. "We go together." They descended in silence, boots echoing against iron steps that hadn't seen light in centuries. At the bottom, a vast chamber opened up. The ceiling stretched into darkness, and in the center stood a machine unlike anything Ethan had ever imagined. It wasn't large, no more than the size of a shipping container, but it radiated power. Its surface was not smooth, but rippling. Like liquid metal frozen mid-motion, symbols danced across it, some resembling ancient cuneiform, others pure digital code. Pulses of violet light surged along its sides like veins. "This is it," Yara whispered, "the fragment core." Ethan approached slowly. As he did, the symbols changed. They rearranged themselves into words. Ethan Cole, temporal anchor verified, origin file located, access. He swallowed hard and nodded. The machine lit up. A beam shot forward, not into him, but outward, casting a circle of light that revealed a holographic scene. A boy sat on a train, alone, his shoes dangling above the floor, his eyes wide, a letter clutched in his hands. It was Ethan, a younger version, maybe 12 years old. "That's me," he whispered. The train was empty, but as the hologram played, figures appeared behind Ethan. Dozens, hundreds, all dressed, 4 different eras: Romans, future soldiers, peasants, scribes, priests, astronauts, kings. And one by one, they vanished. Only Ethan remained. Then came the conductor, looking identical to how he did now. He knelt before young Ethan and handed him something glowing. The pocket watch. Yara gasped. "You're not just an anchor, you're the origin passenger." Ethan's mind reeled. "What? No, I was just a kid. I didn't even remember this." Alice stepped closer. "Maybe the anomalies erased your memory. Maybe you were never supposed to remember until now." Ethan stared into the projection. His younger self stood up, stepped off the train into a blinding white light, and vanished. The projection ended. The machine now pulsed with a warning. "Warning, temporal scar detected. Anomaly inbound." Yara's voice turned sharp. "They know now. You've unlocked the origin. They'll come for you." A new voice echoed through the chamber. "Too late." They turned from the shadows. The silver-eyed anomaly emerged fully formed, its body more stable than before. It no longer flickered. It had adapted. "You don't belong here," Ethan said. Stepping in front of Alice and Yara, the anomaly tilted its head. "Neither do you. You were meant to collapse, not to survive. You are the splinter." Ethan raised the pocket watch. Light poured from its searing golden, ancient temporal defense protocols activated. A shockwave pulsed from Ethan's body, striking the anomaly and forcing it back. "You'll have to try harder than that," Ethan said, voice trembling but firm. The anomaly hissed and vanished into a distortion. The chamber trembled. Yara grabbed Ethan's shoulder. "We have to get out of here now." Behind them, the fragment core shut down. Alice scrambled up the rusted staircase, chased by the timeline can still be healed, but only if the fragment core's chamber was collapsing in on itself. Torn by the anomaly's presence and the burst of temporal energy Ethan had released, by the time they reached the surface station, dust had begun to rise through the access hatch like smoke from a dying machine. "The core's gone," Yara muttered, her face grim. "The past can't guide us anymore." Ethan held the pocket watch in his hand. It had grown warmer, and new symbols were beginning to pulse on its face. 12 of them. Each represented something different: a stone wheel, a clock tower, tree with no leaves, a ship under moonlight, and more. Alice pointed at one. "That symbol. I saw it once, in a book back in 1666, a drawing of a tree surrounded by shadows. The caption said it was the root of time." Yara looked at Ethan. "The root may be where this ends. It's spoken of in the forbidden archives of my century, a place where time doesn't flow, it blooms and dies. It's beyond even the train's reach." Ethan frowned. "Then how do we get there?" Before anyone could answer, the air shimmered. The conductor stepped forward. "Out of nothing you found the core," he said, dust clinging to his coat. "And you survived the anomaly. Good. You knew I was the origin passenger," Ethan said, his voice cold. "I suspected," the conductor replied. "But if I told you, you would have tried to change things. That is the law of the ChronoLine. Do not reveal what must be lived." Ethan didn't argue. "Can the train get us to the route?" The conductor's eyes darkened. "Not yet. It requires all 12 anchor sigils to be awakened. The machine you saw was one of them." He pointed at the pocket watch. "Each symbol on your device marks a sigil hidden across time. You must find the others." Alice looked overwhelmed. "That could take years." Yara shook her head. "Not if we jump time strategically. I can chart pulse echoes, find windows to reach the other sigils faster." Ethan looked at the conductor. "Then get us back on the train." The conductor nodded. He pulled from his coat a small black disc. He dropped it to the ground, and instantly, the floor beneath them shimmered into glass. The city vanished, replaced by steam and red velvet corridors. They were aboard again. Car 6 reformed around them as if it had never been disturbed. Yara checked her readouts. "We're stable. For now." But the conductor's face had grown grimmer. "The anomaly breached car 4, he said. 3 passengers lost. 1 car collapsed into a temporal void. We are not safe for long." "Where's our next sigil?" Ethan asked. Yara turned to a wrist device. "The strongest echo is centered on 1347 CE, southern France. Right before the Black Death peaks." Alice blanched. "We're going into the plague." Yara's eyes flicked to the watch. "The sigil there is the hourglass of the bleeding sky. It's hidden in a cathedral that vanishes from history soon after the plague begins." The conductor walked to the cabin door and opened it. "I'll signal the engineers. You'll have 1 hour in 1347. The longer we stay, the higher the risk of a ripple collapse." Ethan turned to Alice and Yara. "You still with me?" Yara gave a tired smile. "I've come too far to stop now." Alice simply nodded, her eyes reflecting a determination far older than her years. The train lurched again. This time the windows showed not a city of lights, but a landscape of gray skies, dead fields, and shrouded carts. "Southern France." The conductor's voice came overhead. "Caution. Active plague zone. Do not drink local water. Do not remove time shields. Sigil signature is active within the Cathedral of St. Lys." Car doors slid open. The smell hit them first: wood smoke, rot, and something worse. Death. They stepped into the street of a half-abandoned village. Houses leaned on the verge of collapse. A black cat darted between broken carts. Church bells rang in the distance, but not to summon worshippers, only to toll the dead. "Stick together," Ethan said. As they walked, cloaked figures watched them from doorways, faces gaunt, eyes hollow. No one spoke, no one begged. The suffering here had gone beyond desperation. The cathedral loomed ahead, its stones stained by soot and time. But as they approached, something stirred. A shape tall, hunched, was standing just outside the cathedral doors. It looked like a monk, but its skin rippled. Too smooth, too silver. An anomaly, but different. It held a book bound in human leather, and when it looked up, its silver eyes glowed, then split into 4. Yara pulled Ethan behind her. "That's not just an anomaly. That's a weaver. It bends fragments of time into traps." The weaver opened its book. A scream burst forth, not sound, but pure memory. Ethan staggered back, seeing visions of a family burning at the stake, a king drowning in his own gold, a child torn from her mother during war. The pocket watch glowed violently. One of the symbols began spinning the tree without leaves. It's the moment they crossed the cathedral's threshold. The sigil, the world folded in on itself. Burst open. Time twisted, nearly falling as the stone century fell apart beneath his feet, not physically, but temporally. The walls shimmered, candles melted and unmelted, statues wept blood in reverse, chants whispered in Latin, French, and languages he had never heard before, all overlapping in a dissonant harmony that made the air feel thick with time. The cathedral's caught in a memory loop, Yara said, clutching her temples. It's bleeding through centuries. Stained glass windows shattered, then reformed, then shattered again, each cycle revealing different saints, gods, or creatures. Ethan could no longer tell what was real and what was merely echo. The weaver stood at the far end, where the altar should have been. It held the book open, its silver eyes now fully split into 4 quadrants. Each eye seemed to see a different timeline behind it. A tree dead, twisted leafless grew through the cracked marble floor, its bark pulsed like flesh. This was no ordinary sigil. This was ancient, predating the cathedral itself. The hourglass of the bleeding sky, Alice whispered. It's inside the tree. Yara stepped forward, but the weaver hissed. The book in its hands fled to life, and suddenly the floor beneath them sank, pulling them into memory. Ethan stood in fire, but he wasn't burning. He was watching. Dozens of plague victims lay on the cathedral floor. A priest stood over them, chanting prayers as he poured water from a golden hourglass. The victims stopped screaming. Their bodies convulsed and began to float, disappearing mid-air in puffs of ash. A secret rite, a forbidden ritual. Then Ethan saw himself younger again, watching from the rafters, just like in the train memory. How he breathed then. The vision shattered. He was back in the cathedral. Yara was shouting, trying to hold off the weaver with a flickering pulse shield. Alice was scrambling toward the tree, dodging sudden flashes of disjointed times. Snow in summer, fire without heat, shadows that moved without cause. Ethan stepped forward. The pocket watch was glowing white-hot now, the dead tree drawing it like a magnet. The sigil pulsed from inside the bark like a heartbeat, the shape of the leafless symbol burning through the wood. You shouldn't be here, the weaver rasped, its voice layered with hundreds of tones. You were meant to be unmade. Ethan didn't stop, so were you. He reached the tree and thrust the watch into its bark. The tree screamed, not aloud, but mentally. Time itself howled through the walls of the cathedral as the sigil burned into the watch. The symbol spun once, then locked into place. Sigil 2 of 12 acquired. The tree cracked down the middle and turned to dust. The weaver reeled back, its limbs warped, stretching and collapsing. Without the sigil's presence, it lost its grip on this reality. But as it collapsed, it whispered one final thing. The anchor falls in the 11th car. Then it vanished. Yara ran to Ethan. You got it. He held up the watch. Down 10 to go. But he wasn't smiling because his head throbbed, and deep inside his mind, the phrase echoed louder than the cathedral bells. The anchor falls in the 11th car. What does that mean? Alice asked. What 11th car? Yara turned pale. The train has 12 passenger cars, each one tied to a Century Car 11. Hasn't been opened since the temporal collapse. Ethan frowned. Why? Yara whispered. Because it doesn't belong to any time we know. The pocket watch pulsed again. The third symbol, a clock tower, cracked down. The center began to glow faintly. It was calling them forward. The conductor's voice suddenly pierced the silence, but not from above, from inside the walls themselves. Return to the train now. The cathedral shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. The air buzzed with the sound of gears grinding in places where there were no gears. The world was collapsing around them. Alice grabbed Ethan's hand. Let's go. They ran. Back through the village, where corpses still lined the streets, back through the plague-choked fog, and onto the train platform that shimmered into view just as the church bells turned to screams. The conductor stood beside the door of car 6, urgency on his face. Time is unraveling in this era. The weaver was too strong. You must leave before you're pulled in permanently. They leaped aboard. The doors sealed behind them, and the train surged into the time stream once more. But as Ethan looked back one final time through the glass, he saw the weaver watching from the belfry. ChronoLine surged back into the temporal mouth stream, moving silently, its frame groaning behind as it exited. A second anomaly stepped forward, one dressed in inside Ethan's car 6. Ethan collapsed into his seat, chest heaving. The air was different now, thicker, charged with static. The second sigil glowed softly on the pocket watch. But the words from the weaver rang louder in his mind than any accomplishment. The anchor falls in the 11th car. He stared at the watch, its face now pulsing with the light of 2 active symbols. Yara stood by the window, one hand on her temple. 2 sigils in, and the anomalies are adapting faster than expected. The weaver shouldn't have survived that, along in a corrupted loop. Something is feeding them. Alice, quiet until now, whispered that second anomaly. It looked like Ethan. Ethan met her gaze. I saw it too. But that wasn't just a copy. That was me. Or a version of me from a future that shouldn't exist. The conductor's voice suddenly came through, not from the intercom, but from the shadows of the hallway. He stepped into the cabin. his expression grim and weary. "There's something I must show you," he said quietly. "No more delays." Without waiting for a reply, he turned and began walking. Ethan, Alice, and Yara followed him through the velvet-carpeted corridors, the lamps flickering as if reacting to their proximity. They passed Car 7, which was shrouded in silence, Car 8, where the first anomaly attack had left scorched marks across the wall, and Car 9, sealed with chains of shimmering light. Then the conductor stopped at a door Ethan hadn't noticed before. Its number was not engraved but burned into the surface. Car 11. "This car is not on any passenger manifest," the conductor said. "It does not belong to a century because it was created by the rupture." Ethan stepped forward. "The one from the temporal collapse." The conductor nodded. 12 years ago, a traveler used the ChronoLine to try and prevent a war. In their time, they succeeded, but at the cost of collapsing their own timeline. What's left of that world is trapped here. Car 11 is its coffin and its cage. Alice shivered. "Then why bring us here?" The conductor looked directly at Ethan. "Because the anomalies are no longer just hunting anchors. They are gathering memories, fabricating futures they can step into. They are trying to become passengers. And the one who leads them there, prime copy, was born in this car." Ethan's voice dropped to a whisper. "You mean that version of me we saw?" The conductor nodded solemnly. "The train remembers every passenger it has ever carried. But the anomaly version of you, it never boarded. It infected the memory of you, used your origin path as a blueprint. It's why you're the anchor and the target." Yara stepped forward. "If Car 11 is still connected to the core, we could sever the prime copy's influence from the network. It would stop the spread. But at what cost?" Alice asked. "What happens to Ethan?" No one answered. The conductor placed a silver key into the door of Car 11. It hissed open. Beyond lay a corridor of mirrors, but the reflections didn't match. They showed Ethan at different ages, in different clothes, in different centuries, some older, some younger, some wrong. One reflection had no eyes. Another wore a crown of bone. One knelt before a burning train. Ethan stepped through. The others followed. Inside, the air felt like syrup, slow and hot. Time was stretched here, echoing with fractured voices. At the far end stood a throne of clocks, rusted, broken, reversed. Upon it sat Ethan's doppelganger, the prime copy. It stood slowly. Its voice was Ethan's but layered over like tape recorded too many times. "I was the you who chose not to board, who ran, who survived." Ethan stepped forward, watch in hand. "You're not me. I'm what you become if you let fear rewrite your choices," the prime copy said, stepping down. "I saw what the world became. I rebuilt time my way." He extended his hand. "Join me and I'll erase the fractures. We'll make one timeline, one story." Ethan hesitated, but then the pocket watch pulsed and something clicked. Deep in his chest he remembered the first time he boarded the train. As a boy, the loneliness, the wonder, the sense that he had to choose the path forward, no matter the cost. "I won't be rewritten," Ethan said. He raised the pocket watch. A new symbol activated the broken tower. Light exploded. The prime copy screamed, not in pain, but in denial. The mirrors cracked. The throne melted into sand. Time rushed in like a flood and pulled the copy away into the void. Then all went quiet. The corridor dissolved, and Ethan stood once more inside Car 6. The conductor entered. "You severed it," he said. "Car 11 is gone." Yara checked. The watch 3 sigils activated. 9 remain. Ethan looked out the window. The train was moving again forward. The fog was lifting, but now something new appeared on the horizon. A clock tower loomed above the mist like a broken finger pointing to a sky that didn't belong to any era. Ethan stared out the window of Car 6. The silhouette of the cracked clock tower growing larger with every passing second. Its jagged spire pierced clouds that shimmered with impossible colors, violet, bronze, even black. Time didn't seem to flow around the tower. It twisted. Birds flew past it in reverse. Leaves fell upward. Bells rang backward, their sound dissolving into silence. "What year is this?" Ethan asked. Yara's voice was quiet. "No one knows. This isn't a place in time. It's a time between places, a nexus, a scar." The conductor's voice crackled from the overhead speakers. "We are now approaching the tower of the reverse hour. The 4th sigil resides within. Caution is advised. No reflections are trustworthy beyond this point." The door to Car 6 slid open. Fog rolled in like smoke across the floor. Ethan, Yara, and Alice stepped out. The station platform outside was made of glass, suspended in the void. The only path forward led to the base of the clock tower, its massive gears visible through transparent stone, grinding against each other as if the tower was struggling to exist. Alice hesitated. "That tower, it's watching us." And it was high above, behind the cracked clock face. 2 glowing shapes pulsed, eyes not mechanical, not human. Older. Ethan stepped onto the path immediately. His body felt heavier, like time itself clung to him. The closer they got, the more disjointed everything became. Yara's wrist display glitched, showing nonsense characters in years that didn't exist. Alice's voice occasionally echoed before she spoke, like her words were arriving out of order. And Ethan, he began seeing flashes, not memories, possibilities. He saw Alisolda walking alone through a ruined desert. He saw Yara speaking to a crowd of machines, her skin translucent. He saw himself dying inside the train, holding the pocket watch. Don't get distracted, Yara warned. This place projects futures as bait. At the base of the tower, a massive doorway opened without a sound. Inside, a staircase spiraled upward, seemed infinite. Each step they took made the air grow denser. The ticking of the tower surrounded them, but it was wrong. Some of the ticks were backwards, others sideways. Then the stairs split into 3 paths. Each bore a glowing word: regret, denial, ACC. They paused. What is this? Alice asked. Yara pointed to Ethan. The tower is measuring him. These are not paths we can choose, only he can. The watch pulsed. The symbol of the cracked tower glowed brighter. Ethan swallowed. Then I go alone. He stepped toward acceptance immediately. The others vanished. He found himself standing in a long corridor of doors. Each one bore a name, a year, and a memory. His memories. Childhood rooms, classrooms, the moment he found the letter that led him to the train, but also things that hadn't happened. Memories he never made. Lives he could have lived. One door showed him as a historian, writing about the mystery of time travel. Another showed him as a soldier in a war that never happened. One door showed him as a father, standing with a child beside a gravestone marked ChronoLine victim Ethan Cole. He kept walking. At the end of the corridor stood a door with no label. He opened it. Inside was a single chair, and on it sat Ethan, but older, tired, eyes hollow. You're the final version, Ethan said. The older version nodded. The one who saw the end, the last anchor. He held out something wrapped in cloth. Ethan took it, unwrapped it. Inside was the 4th sigil, the fractured clock heart, a gear split in 2 but still turning. Sigil 4 of 12 acquired. Time will try to bend you, the older Ethan said. The anomalies don't need to kill you, they just need to confuse you long enough for the train to derail. Ethan nodded. I won't forget who I am. The older Ethan gave a weak smile. You already have, but you'll remember again. The tower shuddered. The corridor vanished, and Ethan was back on the platform, Alice and Yara beside him. Been gone for hours, Yara said. Wide-eyed, it felt like minutes. Ethan replied. Then the conductor appeared, stepping from a shimmer of light. We must leave. The anomaly is rising. The prime copy has returned. He turned his gaze toward the tower, where the 2 glowing eyes had now turned red. Behind the cracked clock face, a new figure emerged, wearing Ethan's face but different this time, more refined. Like it had evolved again. It didn't speak, it simply raised its hand, and the tower exploded into backward. The shattered pieces of the tower spiraled upward, assembling themselves backward through millennia of architecture. Ethan and the others stood frozen as the clock tower grew younger, collapsing into earlier forms of itself: an obelisk, a lighthouse, a pillar of fire, and then nothing at all. The void where it had stood pulsed red, and out of that impossible space stepped the prime copy. This time, it no longer flickered. It had fully formed. Ethan's face, Ethan's voice, but eyes like polished obsidian. And endless. You've collected 4 sigils, the copy said. Its voice now clean and singular, but I've collected memories. Billions of them. I remember what the train forgot, what you were made to forget. Ethan stepped forward, lifting the pocket watch. You're just a corruption, an echo of a future that failed. I am your final form, the copy snapped. You think you're the anchor? No, you are the key. But it raised a hand, and the sky split. The ChronoLine, far in the distance, let out a horrible groan. No, Yara whispered, scanning rapidly. It's pulling the train off the rails, off the timeline. The copy smiled. All passengers, all centuries, all memories, I will fold them into one loop. Me, the ground trembled. Glass shards from the past and future rained down. Reflections shattered. Time screamed. Ethan grabbed Alice and Yara back to the train. Now, they ran toward the glimmering station platform, but it was fracturing. Like ice breaking underfoot, panels of glass blinked in and out of existence. Years passed in flashes beneath their feet. The cries of dying empires. The birth of machines. Forgotten kings calling out their names one final time as they reached the edge. The conductor appeared in a blast of steam. He was wounded, one eye flickering with light, his coat torn. The anomaly severed the primary engine. He gasped. We're adrift. If we don't re-establish a timeline soon, the ChronoLine will break across all centuries. Can we override it? Yara asked. The conductor reached inside his coat and pulled out something Ethan had never seen. A second pocket watch. But this one was black. Burned, double quotes, prototype core. The conductor said. It predates the anchor system. It can redirect the train, but it needs a destination locked by a true origin memory. Ethan realized what that meant. I have to remember the first time I boarded. The conductor nodded grimly. Not just remember, relive. Ethan closed his eyes. The station, the letter with no date, the sound of the whistle. He reached a warm hand on his shoulder. Not that the conductor, his mother, saying, "You'll be okay, Ethan, I promise. You were always meant to find the path." He gasped. The black watch in the conductor's hand pulsed gold. The sky cracked fully. the copy screamed. No, that memory was mine. You don't get to reclaim it. But it was too late. Ethan reached out and touched the black watch, and the ChronoLine jerked back onto the rails. Reality reset. Passengers reappeared inside their cars. The velvet returned, the sconces flickered, and the voice of the train whispered. Like a lullaby, temporal thread restored, route re-established. Next junction, origin. Ethan opened his eyes. He was back in car 6. Yara and Alice were beside him, but outside the window. The stars had changed, no longer galaxies or planets, but threads, ribbons of memory. The ChronoLine was now traveling through pure narrative, the original river of causality. Yara looked at the watch. We're nearing the origin point. Not a year, not a place. The beginning of time's first question. Alice whispered, why are we here? Had come to know it, turned to them both and smiled. Beyond the train's window, going to find there were no cities, no pyramids, no collapsing towers or flickering anomalies. Only light, endless and slow-moving like threads drawn through molasses. Every strand shimmered with stories, some ancient, some unborn. Memories drifted like dust motes across eternity. The ChronoLine was no longer on rails. It was gliding across something older, something foundational. The river of causality, Yara whispered, staring out the window in awe. It's not just metaphor, it's real. The train coasted silently through it, its engine humming, a deep, almost reverent tone. The air inside car 6 was warm, golden, charged with potential. Ethan stood in the center, watching the pocket watch spin slowly in his palm. 4 sigils glowed brightly. The remaining 8 were dim but stirring, like they could sense proximity to something. Divine, what happens when we reach the origin? Alice asked. Her voice was hushed, like they were inside a cathedral. Yara replied, we face the first question. The one that started all timelines, the one no one remembers asking. The conductor entered, his presence gentler than before. He bowed slightly to Ethan. You've done what no passenger before you ever has, he said. You've reconnected the ChronoLine to its source, but the prime copy followed. It cannot enter the origin unless you invite it. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Why would I ever do that? Because the first question cannot be asked alone, the conductor said. 2 fragments must converge, truth and fear. You are the truth. He is the fear. Yara stepped forward. You're saying he has to be there? The conductor nodded. The first question is not asked to one timeline, it is asked to all possible selves. If you don't complete the loop, it will be asked again and again, with worse consequences. Each time, the train began to slow. Outside the window, a massive structure emerged from the threads of light. It wasn't a building. It wasn't even material. It was a concept, given shape only through proximity. It looked like a station platform, floating in infinity, but it breathed. Ethan stepped to the door. Where are we? He asked. The conductor answered, this is where time first wondered if it should begin. The doors hissed open. Warm lights spilled in. Ethan, Yara, and Alice stepped onto the platform. It felt soft beneath their feet, not like metal or wood, but like walking on memory. The sky, or lack thereof, shimmered with colorless light. In the distance stood a chair made of mirrors, all pointed inward. Hovering above it, pulsing gently, was a crystal-shaped faceted, spinning slowly. The first question. Ethan approached, but before he could reach it, something stepped out of the shadows behind the chair. The prime copy, still wearing Ethan's face, still carrying his voice. You made it, it said, smiling bitterly. And now we end it. Ethan didn't flinch, not end, understand. They stood face to face, mirror and origin. Anchor and echo. The crystal pulsed, a voice, no language, no gender filled the air. Ethan Cole, temporal, anchor, origin, passenger prime fragment, asked the question together. Ethan turned to his doppelganger. I'm not afraid of you. You should be, the copy said. I know the answer. No, Ethan said. You only know the version of it built from pain. The copy hesitated, then, reluctantly stepped to Ethan's side. Together they reached out and touched the crystal. The world stilled. The light turned inward, and the question revealed itself. Should time have ever begun at all? The two Ethan stood in silence. Then the copy whispered, I don't know. Ethan said, I do. He looked at Alice. At Yara. At the train that carried voices from every age, and he answered, yes, because we are more than what time made of us. We are what we choose to become inside it. The crystal cracked, the chair shattered, and light exploded outward, not destruction, but creation. Every sigil on the pocket watch illuminated, all 12, all sigils acquired, anchor confirmed, new timeline ready. The prime copy looked at Ethan. Now fading, what happens to me? Ethan took his hand. You finally get to rest. The copy smiled once genuinely and dissolved into light. The platform vanished. The ChronoLine car 12 was unlike any of the others. No velvet, no windows, no car. The only passenger dome of glass. The train doors opened again, and someone else stepped aboard. Each thread a memory, each memory a lifetime. They moved like rivers beneath Ethan's feet, slow and eternal. He stood alone. No Yara, no Alice, no conductor. Just the ChronoLine. And time itself. The pocket watch in his hand no longer ticked. It pulsed. 12 sigils, each now fully ignited, spun slowly on its surface. But they didn't glow with light, they glowed with possibility. Each represented a fragment of what time had always been: memory, regret, loss, rebirth, fear, hope, love, failure, truth, invention, destruction, and choice. Ethan had collected them all, and now the train waited. Temporal anchor. What will you do? The voice came not from a speaker, but from everywhere: the walls, the floor, his bones. He wasn't surprised. This was the final stop. The place the train had always been headed. I want to go back, Ethan said. Not to escape, but to live. As me in time, not above it. Confirmed. Reintegration requested. The dome above flickered. Ethan looked up and saw himself at 12 years old, sitting alone on the edge of a real-world train station bench. His legs didn't touch the ground. He was holding a letter. His mother stood behind him. I remember this, Ethan whispered. Then go. A door opened. It wasn't mechanical, it was symbolic. A choice. Ethan stepped through, and the ChronoLine vanished behind him. 1 year later, real-world present timeline. The museum was quiet. Ethan stood in the time travel exhibit, his eyes on the full-scale replica of a strange train car, black iron, brass trim, velvet seats. No one else seemed to notice it, but to him, it looked real. Familiar. A girl stepped beside him, maybe 12. She wore a jacket too big for her and had soot smudges on her sleeves. Is it your first time seeing it? She asked. Ethan smiled. No. Yours. The girl nodded. I had a dream once. About a train. Everyone on it was from a different century. Sounds like a good story, Ethan said softly. She tilted her head. Did it end well? He thought for a moment, then looked at the exhibit again. Yes, he said. It did. Elsewhere, or maybe always. The ChronoLine moved through time once more, its form visible only to those it summoned. Passengers stared out at centuries they had never imagined. Some returning to the times they left, others continuing on to new eras. The conductor walked the corridor. He passed Car 1, where a Roman senator read a scroll of rewritten laws. Car 5, where a nurse from 1916 stitched memory into a pocket diary. Car 9, where a samurai practiced blade forms against shadows of his own past. And in Car 12, the chair sat empty. But waiting. The watch sat on the table, still ticking, still ready. Because the ChronoLine never ends, it simply waits for the next passenger.